To order at 6:33. Thank you all for coming tonight, those here and those on the screen, and we'll get started right now. First item is, are there any amendments to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we will move into public comment. So public comment is an opportunity for anyone to speak. Now you have another opportunity at the end of the meeting. If you're online and you don't have your name on your on the Zoom, would you please identify yourself before speaking? We have one request from Nisha McNabb.
Hi, my name's Misha McNabb. I just wanted to introduce myself briefly. I am the Public Health Emergency Preparedness Specialist from the Vermont Department of Health. I understand that y'all may have some requests from the Department of Education, Agency of Education, for Stop the Bleed, Narcan training, and Be Bright at Night training. And I am your point of contact for that training when you decide to schedule it.
All right, well, thank you very much, Nisha. I'm sure that when that time comes, somebody will be in touch on that. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, I'll drop my contact information for the Vermont Department of Health in the chat, so y'all can have it in the meeting minutes and notes whenever it is requested.
I think the chat is disabled, so
You're right,
you could
it
just
is.
send it to Sherry some stuff, that would be great.
I'm sorry.
If you could send it to Superintendent Sherry Sousa.
Sherry Sousa? Got it.
Yes.
Will
And
do.
I bet Lara can also offer it to us. Perhaps. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on from the audience here or online? Okay, then we will move into the next order of business, which is the reports. Sherry could not be with us tonight due to a family medical situation, so we have her report in writing. If there are any comments on that, I'm happy to hear from the board.
She just said really nice things about me. I wanted to point that out.
I noticed that.
Oh, I thought you were just joking.
All right, well, she did have some great things to say. Then the next report would be from the Director of Technology and Innovation.
Good evening, everyone. Two quick updates on our technology work. Just wanted to share with you an exciting development. We've formed a work group to focus and talk about artificial intelligence. So this was prompted by some educators who've been doing some professional development around AI and really wanted an opportunity to talk about what they were learning and for us to begin to think about what it means for us as we're doing our work. So this group is newly formed, we've been going that once, but we'll be meeting monthly for the remainder of the school year as we begin to think about these issues and how they impact our students. And the other piece is just to mention that all of you should have gotten an email from me mentioning the two-factor authentication requirements will be going into effect for all of our users in the next couple of weeks. So if you need help, please let me know. I'm happy to walk you through the process or get you a security key for that process.
Can you tell us when we need to get that computer signed?
I believe it's
The 28th is what I saw.
28th or 20th.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rap. From the Director of Student Support Services.
I'm sorry, she's unwell. She couldn't be here.
Okay. Very good. Curriculum, instruction and assessment.
Good evening, everyone. Jen Staton, CIA. I have a few updates for you. Like that. First, I wanted to mention that we are in the midst of our literacy training as we aim for these proficiency goals that we have in literacy. And right now, Julie Brown is working with teachers in grades 5 through 12. And we are lucky to have you here tonight. And she's just going to share a quick piece of information about what's happening with those teachers.
Hi, everyone. Julie Brown. So we're working with 35 grades 5 through 12 teachers. They're incredible. We're learning about current reading research and some shifts we can make collaboratively in our classrooms to ensure more of our students succeed in our classrooms. So it's very exciting.
Thanks, Julie.
Yeah.
We also had our late start Wednesday last week, which you probably experienced. And what was great about this one was teachers got to meet with one another from different groups and hear about the learning that's happened. It's called a jigsaw, where they get to share and learn from one another. And that's really important in moving forward our equity work. And then last thing I just wanted to touch base on was the results of NEASC are still embargoed, unfortunately, but Garen is here to share a little bit about that process, and we hope to have the results for you next time.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, the results are still in process. I'll get a draft report sometime in the spring and bring it forward to the community to share with it. But a little bit of an update. So the NEASC process, that's the New England Association of Colleges and Schools. That's right. Does both public and private schools around New England as well as colleges. So they've updated their process. It used to be a 10-year process. It was really, and we've been accredited since 1956, every 10 years to do a deep dive into the school. About 10 years ago, they updated the process to be an ongoing cycle. And so we've been getting toward what was our decennial visit just in November for the past couple of years. In 2009, we did a deep self-reflection based on the standards and identified what are some growth areas for us. We hosted a virtual collaborative conference visit in 2021 during that year to look at what we presented and see if they confirmed with us that what we said was accurate. And they did agree with us and identified 4 areas. One was to work on our written curriculum. Another one was to look at how are we doing our assessment of the portrait of a graduate and giving feedback to students and families. A third was looking at our tier 1 and tier 2 supports. So how are we doing those in-class support structures for students? And then the last one was to look at some of our infrastructure and building in deficiencies and issues happening in those areas. So we then said, here's what our growth will look like in those areas. We submitted that to the team. We hosted a large visiting team last month, about 8 people. Aiden and Owen gave a tour of the group to the building, probably had 30+ students in different focus groups. Some board members, thank you, joined a focus group as well to look around those standards. Also met with Joe Rigoli, got into almost every classroom to do a pretty comprehensive review of our high school, middle school. So what we'll get back is both where does our accreditation stand, and then also where vis-a-vis their standards makes good sense to focus on our growth. So I'll come back in the spring with a report from the commission. Thanks.
That's it for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The Director of Finance and Operations.
Sure. I just have a couple quick things to share. As I noted in my, in the board book, our accounts payable clerk has left us recently because of all the streamlining we've done in our office. We're gonna go without filling the position for a few months and see if we can manage it without the body. My thought is that it's gonna be too much and we'll end up putting a part-time person in. I don't see that ever returning as a full-time position. We streamline so much work, we don't have the need for 5 days a week, maybe 2 or 3. The other thing I wanted to point out, because we've talked a lot about this, but I've never shared the numbers, is year-to-date through December 31st, Rhiannon and all of our team, our teachers, our principals, and everybody else, working through our grant writer, have raised $326,000 of money above and beyond the budget, and still working hard over the next 6 months to increase that more. But, you know, we don't talk about it much, and, you know, everybody, you know, I look back here and I can point half a dozen people here who've been part of the process of bringing this money in, working with Rhiannon and working with community members, and it's just been great. I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you, Jim. Our student representatives, Board members, Aiden and O.
I mean, maybe stand as we talk, but, yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start with mine. I think that for the past month, and kind of a little bit of 2 months too, kind of dip into what we've been doing in November. It's been filled with a bunch of academic and athletic achievements. Winter sports have kicked off to a really strong start. I think that we have like good amount of games now. There's been a lot of, wins and home games that really like a lot of students look forward to. I know that I've been to some of the hockey games and really good atmosphere and, just good to see those start up again. The unified basketball team has also begun practicing on Thursdays during like our free period, which we call our time. And they're preparing for some games and that they will have late in the coming weeks, I think March specifically. Youth Theater also had an incredible and engaging and creative performance of Robin Hood, where they, many middle and high school students who are part of the theater program did a lot of dancing and singing and really really got the audience involved. So that was, really kind of hit for them. The craft program has set up an exchange with students in the Bose school, and that is located in Ingolstadt. I probably butchered that, Germany. And the exchange will focus on like kind of just cultural and historical food and aggregation systems that they have in each other's regions. And it'll be cool to see that partnership develop. And yeah. A lot of classes are making other academic achievements as well, so. Hand it over to one.
It really killed me with that report this time. Mine looks really meager, but I feel like January for students sometimes can be kind of dry. But it's like kind of a crunch month, so I know that the SAT prep class is kind of starting back up again, and there's a lot of major deadlines because we're on a quarter system, but like our quote unquote semester ends in a little bit. And then, you know, kind of on the more lighthearted end, some high school seniors, if they applied early, have heard some exciting news. So I texted Tess way too late, so she didn't come to this meeting, but Tess is going to Tulane in the fall, so congrats to her, and there's others too. And then, you know, like Aiden was saying, there's some fun kind of community engagement events from student council and youth theater, and of course, winter sports, which continue to have a really high level of participation, which is good to see. So, yeah, that's it.
All right, well, thank you too for all you do. Also in our packet is a comprehensive report from the craft program. So I hope you all have a chance to take a look at the various things that they've been doing. Okay, the next appointment we have is continuous improvement for literacy and mathematics with a presentation from some of you here.
Yes. That's fun.
Yeah, sure. Let's see, one is from the board back.
Yeah.
I want to give them pieces.
Yeah.
Page 13. Thank you.
So while we're getting the presentation up, I'll share the context for this today. Yes.
Ben, could you please share your screen via Zoom so our Zoom people can see it?
Sure. Right here.
You're not.
We'll practice.
So this is a presentation of what we're calling our district continuous improvement team. We have some really ambitious goals for student proficiency in literacy and mathematics, and to make sure we're reaching those goals and also checking ourselves along the way. We've put together this team to create a process by which we are constantly ensuring we are continuously improving. So the team is made up of the people here. We sort of had attrition by sickness today, so we're all here presenting. You know me, but would you like to present yourself?
Julie Brown, District Literacy Facilitator. I'm Audrey Richardson. I'm the Secondary MTSS Coordinator.
Next slide.
Thanks. So continuous improvement group that we have here is something that we have really been meeting for the last, I would say, like year, a little over a year.
or through the summer and into this year. But it's a process that started with the literacy initiative and math work that we've been doing. And we're really looking at not just what are these different content areas or skills that we're working on in our schools and how can we do it better, but really like how we do it better. So the idea of continuous improvement is based in sort of this improvement science lens. And that really takes us through cycles of improvement. So we're really being intentional about the change that we're trying to make. So the idea with the literacy, the math, and any of those kind of pieces that are involved in this is that we are looking at change over time and sustainable change and building capacity versus like quick fixes. So I think it's very easy to think like, okay, we've decided to really reframe our literacy game. How's that going to happen? And it just happens, right? But we're really, as I said, thinking about intentional change that is cyclical and that continues. We've been anchoring some of our work in Anthony Bright's work, which is about sort of learning to improve. And the idea, one of the things he says is continuous improvement is just that, continuous. It just keeps going. So this is just kind of an example of a cycle that we would follow. This, we start with the local, identifying the local need, whether that's based in data, then selecting relevant evidence-based practices, moving to plan for implementation, implementing, and then examining and reflecting. And that's really where we're going to focus today is the role of assessment in all of this. And then just one other thing that I'll mention is this little diagram kind of shows these cycles of change over time, right? We're not just in one big cycle that's kind of rotating through, but rather like trying to kind of work on certain goals at a time and in that kind of continue to make progress forward.
So a goal we just wanted to remind you that we have is that 90% of Mountain View students are proficient or above in reading and mathematics by the end of grade 3, and then remain proficient or above beyond grade 3. And Julie's going to speak to how this came to be, but we do want to say that this is ambitious. However, it's attainable, and it does require every person in our system in order to make it happen. Okay, next slide.
So you may be wondering, what is this 90%? There were scores of teachers across the district from all schools looking at literacy and math. And they called themselves the Equity Working Group. And their mission was to increase excellence, equity, and coherence around education for outcomes in our district. So they're looking at the research around learning and teaching and what would improve equitable outcomes for our students. And the teachers and leaders as part of that group decided that the research was clear, that we were going to aim for what the research says is possible. And they set that goal, which would be achieved through some shifts in the kinds of instruction that we're providing to students, guided by a knowledge building comprehensive curriculum and inclusive of interventions and all the wonderful supports that we can offer our students.
So the question we are now left with is, how will we know we are at 90%? Okay, that's a question we keep asking ourselves and we hear from everybody else. Well, a couple of weeks ago, when I was down in DC with Sherry at a conference, I was able to sit in on a presentation by Thomas Gusky, and it was about this topic. And he said, you know you're at 90% or whatever goal you have when your most trusted assessment or tool or piece of information tells you so, right? Seems pretty straightforward, but we're going to get into what a trusted assessment is actually quite nuanced. So what we're gonna ask you to do is a little activity. I know we've never really done this before, so this is new for us. Anyone in the room can participate. What we're gonna ask you to do is right now, pretend you're donning your board member hat. Okay, so you're here with a particular perspective. We're gonna ask you to take off that hat for a second or whatever hat you're wearing and don a parent hat. So think of yourself as a parent of your own children in a school system, or if you have grandchildren, or just sort of pretend. And we have some sheets of paper around, and we'd like you to write down anywhere in front of you on a blank sheet or just even scribble with a note. As a parent or guardian, what is your number one most trusted source of information about your child's performance in reading and math? What is your number one most trusted source? And don't talk about it, just write down what is your, as a parent, maybe donning a fictitious hat.
And can folks online participate?
Absolutely, folks online or in the audience, you can participate.
Just write your answer and hold it up to the camera.
Okay, breath of, you know, check out that sample.
Are they? So when you're finished, just turn and share that with your,
Yeah.
with the thought partner.
Talk to someone next to you.
I'm sorry. My mom was calling. I just wanted to make sure she did
Probably not.
I agree.
That was a really fun conversation. We heard everything from what I see my child doing. We heard a lot about grades. We heard a lot about homework and how hard it is to get your child to do the homework or not. That was a fun one. Report cards. That's a big one. Thank you for that conversation.
Great. So the next slide, we're gonna ask you to take off your parent hat for a minute and now put on a community member hat. Okay, so as a community member, the people you represent as board, what's your number one most trusted source of information about Mountain View students' outcomes in reading and math?
So write your answer down, take a moment to gather your thoughts with your community member, and then turn to a thought partner and talk it out.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, how would I? Oh, I was just saying, yeah, My son is great. I think maybe like share some. You got it. Oh, yeah. So I know my wife. Beautiful this.
Writing down in 3, 2, 1. Thank you for coming together. We heard a lot of common themes, state and national level data. We heard whatever Jen and Raf said. What are some other things that you all heard?
Some suggestions for potential changes we could make so that the community is more informed, actually.
Okay.
Awesome. So thank you for engaging in that activity. That was great to hear your thoughts on that. And it helps us gather some data because this is actually a part of our data collection process. You didn't realize you're actually giving us excellent information to plan with. So Raf's gonna speak to this.
So, and this really hits on something that Sam was just talking about, like, most trusted really varies, right? And I think what you may have seen in this activity is that from one perspective, you may have trusted one data source more, and from a different perspective, you may have sought of something else. And this is the struggle that we face as well, and trying to figure out what 90%, what measure we use. And so we have all these different measures. They all serve a different purposes. They all have their own strengths and shortcomings. And so we're trying to find a way to mix and match these together in a way that really represents how students are doing, acknowledging that tension that all of you, or many of you just pointed out, in that there is some real difference in those perspectives.
And if you think about change on this scale, which requires every person to be involved, you need to make sure that every person trusts the data and has the ability to celebrate when you actually reach proficiency. If you're not trusting the data used, you can't celebrate. So that's what we're hoping to do here. Next slide. So we are going through a process of triangulating data, which is essentially, we're trying to capture the right sources of information to get a snapshot of what success looks like at 90%. So that's what that term means. And yeah, next slide. So this is where we are. We are in the process of gathering information from stakeholders. We have students K-3, teachers K-3, split out grades 4 to 10, principals, district admin, parents, and community. We're trying to tease out what are those most trusted assessments of how our students are doing toward proficiency. And then we are hoping to come up with celebration points using those assessments. So we can say, hey, we are bronze as a district, and actually celebrate that, and then maybe have a silver benchmark, gold, and then aiming for platinum along. Of course, we're still in that data collection process, but we just wanted to give you a snapshot of what we're working on as we're working towards continuous improvement and reaching that proficiency goal.
I think also like these phases of, as we're celebrating at different phases, like that really contributes to how we evolve through those sort of cycles of improvement. Like we learn a little bit at each celebration. It's not, it's great to give ourselves a pat on the back, and I think that's so important, but also that data in itself, to be able to move forward with some of those.
Also. Okay, yeah, no, I'll go.
Great to hear. Any questions?
No, thank you very much for the data reports that we do get regularly, and also for explaining what they mean for the board. So thank you for all you do.
May I ask a question?
No. Who's asking a question?
Yes. Can I ask a question? Can you tell us a little bit about where we are now with these goals?
Deirdre, I'm sorry, but we only take the questions during public comments. So at the end of the meeting, you'll have a chance to ask that question.
Thank
or
you.
Make a statement. Thank you. Okay, the next up is the mountain biking request. This fall, the mountain bike team came to the board with a request to be granted to be moved from club status to varsity status. At the same time, there's a committee, the policy committee is working on the same kind of thinking, but separate and apart from that, because that policy isn't ready yet to be approved by the board. Following BPA guidelines and regulations, we determined that indeed they did meet the measures for becoming a team. They have many people on their team, so they certainly have plenty of participation, and they have been operating for quite a few years. So, and when the board the finance was discussing financing, they did include an amount for the mountain biking request. So we're asking tonight to ask any questions about this, although I'm not an expert on it, that the expert isn't here. That we did suggest that we vote to grant them varsity status starting in the next school year. I'll make a motion to, oh, go ahead.
I maybe Matt Stout should make the motion.
Is he here? Yes, Matt, so would you make the motion?
Sure, I'll make the motion to approve changing the status of the mountain bike team from club to a varsity team.
I'll second. Matt, would you like to make any comments?
I think I've made this comment in the board meetings before, just that it's a tremendous opportunity that we offer the kids. It's not offered at every school. And they're very, very serious athletes competing at some of the top national levels. The coach puts in his time and effort like every other coach, and so I think he deserves a stipend. But aside from just the budget, I mean, these kids deserve to be recognized like all other athletes at the school. on the bulletin boards, on This Week in Sports. And you see that happen in the Vermont Standard, but you're not even seeing it happen in the halls of the school because there are some restrictions on how clubs versus teams are treated. So I do feel passionately about it, and I hope that the board is in favor of it. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board or questions?
I would like to say that, that I concur with everything that Matt said, not only at the high school level, but this also has, feeder groups for 5th and 6th grade riders as well. So I'm expected that we'll get more participation there also. And, as a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, I had a hard time keeping up with 5th grade riders. So these kids are, these riders are incredible, really incredible.
How many kids participate in mountain biking currently? Do we have a sense? Right.
Remember, a very large number. Matt, do you know?
The numbers, I think, are around 35. So I know just off the top of my head, like girls varsity soccer, just my daughter just did that, was the largest team program in the school, and that was 44. So just to give you a sense, like this team is definitely at that level.
All right, are we ready to take the vote? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you very much for your support of this newest varsity sport. Let Owen and Aiden make sure you let folks there. All right, the next appointment is to appoint a Union Arena and Potwin Trust Board member to serve on that board. And at our last meeting, when the need was made known, Ray Rice offered to fill that position. So if somebody would like to nominate Ray Rice for that position. So moved. And Anna has moved it, and is there a second? Second. Do we need to discuss Ray Rice?
No, I've reached out to him. So I've reached out to the trust. They're not necessarily called trustees, but I've reached out to them and I'm in the email chain, and it's all moving forward as planned.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ray, for doing this. We've not, yeah, okay. All in favor of appointing Ray, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you, Ray, very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, now we have the projected fiscal year 25 budget presentation from Jim Penn and Zen Ford.
Okay, Jim, am I taking it away?
Sure.
Share my screen, yeah. Okay, a month ago, we were here, I need to get this switched over. We went through a presentation on the budget, and I'm gonna rewind this. I'm gonna run through the same deck that we went through in December. I didn't update the slide, but the cover slide. But wanted to present the same topics with just a little bit more information and kind of refresh on how tax rates work. And by the end of the presentation, we'll provide the projected FY 25 town tax rates. Just to not bury the lead, what we're seeing is that the CLAs came in last week, and we are seeing massive, appreciation of real estate values, and that's what the CLA is based on. We've seen it happening for the past couple of years, and it's continuing. It's real estate activity from 2021, 22, and 23, and these latest numbers are reflective of that. So sobering, but let's move into the presentation. So again, I wanted to remind everybody about the implementation of Act 127, the portion of the budget this year. And I'll provide a little bit more detail on this, that is subject to increase due to spending of the school district is going up by 5%. And the reason for that is because we're capped at 5%. And the way that the yield has been set this year, and this is a number we can go through, it's forcing just about every school district in the state to be at that 5%. And I've got a graphic on that in a minute.
Like I said, all towns except for Pomfret are gonna see, pretty significant increases, to tax rates due to the CLAs. Pomfret, of course, did their reappraisal last year, so they're in a little bit different situation. And then, we'll talk this evening about the opportunity we have with the Act 127 framework to, reduce our capital debt, based on what I'm gonna refer to in a moment as a dead zone and, the impact of that 5% cap. I'm gonna skip through some of these slides, but just as a refresher, we arrived at tax rates by taking our entire total expenditure budget, subtracting our local revenues, those are things like grant funding, tuition dollars, and we come to education spending. Education spending is what we need to raise from the education fund, it's taxpayer dollars. From here, and these are some of the edits that you might remember from a month ago, you take education spending, you used to divide it by your equalized pupils. The new factor that's used in the funding formulas is called weighted long-term membership. That equals your per pupil spend. And it used to be that we had a penalty phase or excess spending threshold. That's been, put on hold through FY 29 for the transition period of Act 127. In its place is a cap of 10% in per pupil spending from one year to the next. So long as we do not exceed a 10% increase in our per pupil spending, our taxes will go up 5%. If they do go up by more than 10, then you're subject to a tax rate review by the Agency of Education. It's the secretary, 3 superintendents, 3 business managers, and they'll determine whether or not the spending was within district's control, and whether it's supported by good cause. And if you fail that, then you don't get the benefit of the cap. You take that per pupil spend, divide it by the property yield. That's the factor that indicates kind of how much money's in the ed fund on the basis of a forecast. And that gives you your equalized tax rate. That's the tax rate applies at the district level before the town. And then that equalization study, that 3-year CLA study I talked about, is the equalized tax rate gets divided by the CLA, and that gives you your town tax rate. So the budget drivers we talked about last time, these have all kind of come into place. Based on the audit results, we're not expecting a surplus or a deficit from our most recent audit. This would have been of FY 23. It's a kind of a 1-year lag. We have a new system for counting our ADM, right? The LTW ADM. The number of pupils we have now is a little bit hard to follow in that we're going from 918 to 1,500. And today we got an update. This number is now 520. And those numbers are now locked. So those were in flux over the last few weeks. The yield goes from 15,479 last year down to 9,452. That's the number that's forcing everybody into that 5%. One of the big things impacting our budget is the cost of health insurance. This is set at a statewide level. We just get told how much health insurance costs. And it's a 16.4% increase this year. There's nothing that the district can do about it. Increases to staff pay. We've got some commitments that we need to make good on based on existing contracts and obligations. The teacher contract will be renewed this next year. That's TBD. We've got some flexibility in our budget to handle where we may land with that, but we'll have to see what that does. And then that, like I said, the 5% cap on the equalized tax rate is due to the Act 127 5-year implementation. So what does that leave us with is the question of, what's our, tax capacity? That number is around $26 million. That's how much we can raise from, the ed fund, take from the ed fund and still have a 5% increase to taxes. So we'll keep that number in mind.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
On that last slide? So that said we had 1,500 students?
Yeah, but they're not students anymore. They're weighted, and essentially, you might remember these slides, these weightings. So this is our existing weightings under, before Act 127. This is the only things that kind of changed what you counted for a pupil. And these new weightings are additive, right? You add these weights or subtract in case of the 3-year-old pre-K student, that amount. So all these others are increased. And the reason that we're coming out so far ahead is because During Act 46, we picked up Reading, we took on Barnard Elementary School, we have Plymouth, we have Bridgewater, we have places that are very sparse. And sparsity, as you can see, counts a lot. And you take that across all the students of our district, and it comes out to each one of our students now counting for about 1.6 in the count, right? That's just a factor. These are all formulas that the state uses to determine the distribution of education funding in the state. And yeah, well.
If per pupil spend goes up, say, 8 or 9%, the taxes only go up 5, where's the other 3 or 4% come from?
That's a great question, and a lot of people are very excited about it right now. For those who have been around Vermont a long time, I haven't been around as long as for Act 60, for instance. This is another kind of reshuffling, right? Like not to that magnitude, but there are actually I'm going to show you in a moment kind of some of the exchanges we've had with the AOE on this, because our recently our representative for Woodstock, Charlie Kimball, he and I had a discussion after the last board meeting, and he was concerned that he thought that this 5% cap only applied to the losers, as it were, from Act 127, those districts who were going to be coming out behind. It's not so, and so I gave him a read of the new law, and he took that to the AOE, Brad James, who crunches all the numbers, and Brad confirmed. And there was some exchange about, like, well, how can this be? Where's this money gonna come from, right? If people are, tapping into this excess, and, it remains to be seen, right? But we'll see. There's some things the state could do to kind of close off the number of districts that are, able to kind of cash in on that. And the biggest one would be to raise the yield, right? If the state were to invest, say, like, take a bunch of cannabis money and put that in the ed fund, then you eliminate districts' ability to hit the 5% cap, right? And we'll have to see, and that's what the tax commissioner was essentially calling for the legislature to do. But anyway.
And can you come back to the pie chart that you skipped over that shows where the revenue comes from?
Oh, in the ed fund, sure.
Yeah, that's a good one to show.
Yeah, sure. This is just the state ed fund and what makes it up. We talked about this in the last board meeting, but a lot of people don't realize that homestead property taxes, that's your full-time residents, only contribute about a quarter of the ed fund. That's the bottom portion. The largest portion is from non-homestead taxes, right? Your businesses, your second homeowners contribute much more to, and the ed fund pays, everything, right? It's both your teacher salaries. If in a moment, we're going to be talking about the new building and the bond for that. It's the same source of money. And then sales and use tax contributes almost as much as the homestead property tax. And then the state lottery, meals and rooms, vehicle purchase and use tax, some other sources. Yeah. Okay, let's, this is interesting. So those are the drivers. What I wanted to, this is all stuff we've talked about before. I don't know if everyone can see this in the room, but this is just an email from Brad James confirming that, he says an exact reading of the language supports, as it states, when applying the formula created under this act, it's not the cause of the tax rate increase, whether you're a loser district, in this, but the overall application of the funding formula to the budget, that's the determinant. And so he says, I do want to make sure everyone knows that if you don't have a 5% cap tax rate in any of the 5 years, then the capping option is no longer available for the ensuing years. So for a district like ours, it's very important that we hit the cap this year, right? Because if we don't, then that's not available to us for the next 4 years, and we could see tax rate increases, depending on what comes. And that's something that we, have, kind of set the number at to achieve. Okay, so budget priorities is something we talk about every year. Kind of why are we spending roughly $3.5 million more this year than we did last year? And these are some of the things that we've talked about in sessions with the board so far. Adding positions that are of critical importance, adding one of the pre-K classrooms back to West. That's an investment in enrollment, right? So that helps to get the health of our district and our budget. The health insurance, we can't do anything about. Capital projects, that's really kind of discretionary. That's something that we'll see here. We'll need to decide whether that we want to, add that this year or not. I'm going to recommend that we do. And then the wage and benefit increase, this is just for the obligations that we've already got. A lot of that, when we walked through the budget, you may remember Jim talking about how we switched a position and someone who was single, had a spouse or a family. And a lot of those benefit increases, we've got to cover. So we had a lot of that activity this year.
Then remind me, because I'm blanking, when did pre-K go from being cost neutral to being a budget expense? When did we make that decision?
Cost neutral?
Well, remember when we first started doing pre-K, that was the decision, was it was supposed to be, it was supposed to be.
Well, I mean, in terms of, I don't know, Jim, maybe you could speak to that in terms of when we add the pre-K, is that going to cost more money, or is it gonna drive more revenue through enrollment?
And that was, I thought when we first talked about doing it, that was the plan, was to keep it cost neutral by driving enrollment.
I wasn't here when you originally started with the
Yeah.
pre-Ks. One of the things that has changed in next year, though, is the 4-year-olds get a full count instead of a half count.
Okay.
So we'll generate more revenue with the 4-year-olds.
Okay.
And the 3-year-olds still are a half count, or approximately a half count on the money from the state. So that will help offset this. Keep in mind that we had 5 pre-Ks at West last year. We dropped to 3 this year. And could have filled the 4th one. And so this is really as we're right sizing the program in that building.
Okay.
Right, and the other thing I should point out, Sam, is that this is gonna be a lag because you count your ADM in the first week, right? So we only have 3 pre-Ks at West right now, right? So we only get the revenue for the students this year, even though we have to, take on the cost for this new pre-K.
Okay.
If, in a year from now, it may be revenue neutral. I would expect it probably will be.
Okay.
My guess is that-
Curious. I remember a lot of talk around that when we first started doing pre-K, and then I see it in a budget line, so I just wanted to get more money.
My guess is it's about revenue neutral because right now with the children that are in the private schools, we have to pass through all the state funds anyways.
Okay.
And so the difference is we keep them here and we teach them with our programs.
So this next slide I put together just to show you what the impact of Act 127 is on our spending decisions this year. So this line that goes across the chart, you can see these are the different levels of spending, right? These are in millions of dollars. And last year we spent around $22 million and had a tax rate, the equalized tax rate of 15223, right? This year, we very quickly, within about $1 million of spending, and you saw all the things on the last slide that, we need to spend money on to make good on our obligations to, our community, to our teachers, just to pay for the health insurance. Within about $1 million, we hit that 5% cap, right? If the planned spend we've got is up here, but there's no difference to the tax rate in this entire band, right? This is the difference between that 5% and the 10%. So we would have to cut $2 million from our budget just to start saving money to the taxpayer, right? Which is, you're talking about firing 20 people. That's really the only way you could make those kinds of savings, cutting programs, cutting people. And then if you were to, pay off, again, I said in the overview that, that this is, an opportunity to save, to pay off about $750K in debt. You may remember last year, the Killington Roof project, the architecture fees, the upgrade to the heating system, we borrowed $5 million. Well, with this additional tax capacity, right, at the same tax rate, we can, take that money and start kind of cleaning up our budget, right? And that's, the recommendation to the board is that we do that, right? Because we can't save the taxpayer money, this year without wildly impacting programs. We may as well take advantage of the structure that we've got.
And if you, next year, because you're capped at 10% over next year, it's like if you can capitalize on this for a couple of years, you can actually do quite a bit of cleanup and still be under.
Yeah, and you may not believe it, but I've done some math on that.
Quite hard to believe.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, I'll be happy to show it to you after the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can see that it's, if you go 1 penny over that, say, $26 million available spend that we saw on the budget drivers, your tax rate flips, jumps up by, 20 cents. So that's a line that Jim will be tasked with absolutely not crossing. Okay, so those are the budget drivers. Now, here's the equalized tax rate, and you can see, this is a slide that I show every year. It's got a ton of data on it, but it's great to see trends. I think one of the most interesting things is looking at the, this is not correct, that's not 5223. This is actually in that lower left on FY 21, it was $1.80 back in FY 21, this number. Sorry about this, guys. This should be, oops. This was, yeah, 181 back then. So you can see that the tax rate came down over time. And what's going on? I got some, sorry guys, I got some data issues there on FY 23 on that bottom row, equalized tax rate. But anyway, for the FY 24 and 5, you can see the, the various numbers, the 3.5 million of additional spending. One of the big drivers of that also is that we lost a whole bunch of local revenue, right? That money that we kind of count on, the grant funding, that kind of thing, tuition dollars. That's our education spending. You can see how that's changing. Again, that's really the difference in the expenditure budget plus the loss of the local revenues that drives that 4.4. And then you've got your equalized pupil difference, the per pupil spend. That's coming down. And I'm really sorry, I got some data issues there. We were cutting and pasting furiously. But anyway, let's get to the tax rates. So this was the current year tax rates. You can see this compares to FY 23 and the increases that we had this last year. Like I said, this was kind of year 2 of the 3 years of massive appreciation of real estate values. And here are next year's town tax rates. They are, like I said, ugly. These are the increases that we'll see at the town level, not as a result, as I said, of very much increase to school spending. We're capped at 5%. This is the CLA. This is the appreciation of home values that's doing this, right? And as you can see, Pomfret did their reappraisal. There's kind of getting off so the lightest because they kind of took their medicine with the reappraisal. So hopefully we'll see this cool. Killington, they got kind of the worst of all of us in terms of the where their CLA is down at 5.2. That essentially doubles the tax liability from their grand list values.
They have the dubious honor of having the lowest CLA in the state.
Yeah.
Just a little bit ahead of Stowe.
Right. But what this does is that every town, and most towns in Vermont, are required to conduct a reappraisal. That's not gonna save taxpayers money. I mean, when you do the reappraisal, your home value gets updated on the grant list, and even though the number is different, the tax rate is lower, the amount owed is going to be significantly higher. Okay, questions on the budget and where it's ending up for us on tax rates? Okay. So let's go to we'll need to vote on the budget itself. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see, Jim, do you have the form of warning for the budget itself in here? In the board. Yeah, I think it's gonna be. So 5H. That's, there's two articles. It's gonna be article, here we go. This, now these numbers we want to revisit from what we got here. This is essentially the number that we had, let's see, just from my handy dandy slide here. Yeah, this number is what's in the warning. And if we want to do the 750 to come kind of close to that line without going over, then the number is. Apologies, like I said, we've been doing a lot of math around here lately. 30,429,153. Does that sound right to you, Jim?
Yes.
And the per pupil spend number would then be 17,043,000. So do I have a motion to approve the FY 25 budget warning at those numbers.
I so move.
Scott? Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
How much did the, per pupil cost go up? Exactly.
Per pupil cost,
Last year.
it's gonna be 10%, right? It's like right up to that line, of that, 9.5, want to give ourselves some buffer so we don't go over the line. But it's interesting because it's calculated, so differently, because what's a pupil is different.
It's so different.
Right, you could be like, it went from like $24,000 to, 17.
Yeah, I was gonna say, coverage was under the previous
Right.
year. Yeah, that's why I was confused. I was like, listen.
What was the increase between last year's to this year's? 7 million?
Of the budget number,
Yeah.
about 3.5.
Okay.
3.5 is spending.
So very rudimentary terms. Appraisal value's gone up, right? The benefit of people want to move to a place like this, property values are going up. But we're not bringing in a lot of people to our districts, period, across the state. So we still have to keep up with what the appraisal is with less people.
People.
Well, some of those families that have moved here do have kids.
Very few.
Probably not enough.
Yeah, not enough.
Yeah, very few.
We still continue to be at a rate as a state where we have more deaths than we have births.
Yeah, I'd say certainly the number of students that we gained during the pandemic, it didn't offset the increases to real estate value. Yeah. And those have kind of gone back down to pre-pandemic levels.
So that, like, historically, right, when they developed suburbs, you had families moving in, that would justify, increased costs for properties, but then you had more people paying into it, so it wasn't as big of a jump. Now we have higher property values, but we're not getting enough kids, young people, families to offset the costs. I mean, that's my basic level.
Yeah, but one of the hopes is that when you go back to like these drivers of again, hope is a terrible word to use when you're, making budget decisions, but you go back to the sources of the ed fund, if you've got, this massive influx in real estate value, then, you would expect to see, that kind of even out the hits to the tax rate, right? If everything is going up kind of equally, but that remains to be seen. We have massive inflation, and we'll talk about that on the school bond here in a moment.
Matt Stout has his hand up. I don't see it right now, but.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to that.
I'll just say that on that CLA question, it seems like the towns that have property values that are growing the fastest would be then contributing more to the state funds. Is that true?
I think that's the point I was just trying to make, yes.
Yeah, so, on this question of could we possibly reduce our budget to under 5%? I think you said really well that there's no viable path to do that without massive layoffs and reducing programs.
Yeah, let me hit that, man. Sorry, if you have a question, let me cut you off.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So if you go back to this slide here, right, this deadband slide that I presented. One thing the state could do, like I said, if they poured like a bunch of cannabis money into the ed fund, you could see that yellow, essentially that yellow area would go up, right? Because the 5% threshold would be at a higher point of spending, right? So at that point, I mean, it's unfortunate that that's gonna happen in the spring, that the legislature is gonna meet and make some decisions about, how to adjust the yield. They could very much set the yield at a point where we can't hit 5%. And that would be a smart thing for the state to do if they think that a lot of districts are gonna take advantage of this kind of free money that Bob was looking at, right? But we'll have to see. We'll have to see if that happens. I don't know where they get the money. From the tax commissioner's letter, they've kind of indicated that all the pandemic money is drying up and, kind of looking to the legislature to find some money. But sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, I'll just be quick. So the motion on the floor is to take it to the that third highest point there, that just under the 10%. Is that, I didn't
Correct.
hear that. Okay.
Yeah.
I support the motion. I mean, it's the same effect on our taxpayers if it were 5%. And I'm done with comment. Thank you.
Anna?
I'm gonna direct this both to Ben and Jim. How comfortable do you feel that we can reach that point next year without surpassing the cap? I mean, are we giving y'all enough buffer zone so that we're protecting ourselves from penalties?
Yeah, this is about 0.5% of buffer, and it gives us, and today the student numbers were locked. Brad James was actually like the last week of his career at the Agency of Education, his last active office, to answer that email. But his replacement, what's her name, Nicole Lee?
Nicole Lee.
She sent out the updates and she said, these numbers are now locked. We have our numbers of our last year's per pupil spend. We have this year's ADM number, and at that point, it's just a math equation. I think the question is, like last year, we saw a reduction in the local revenue. And something like that, if you had to reach into taxpayer funds to make up for a shortfall and say grant funding, and that could take you over. But
I think I see our local revenues being fairly stable for the next few years.
okay.
Where we can gain is in two areas, I think. One is as Killington starts their development, but also every additional tuition student we bring to the high school is $20,000 of revenue. So 5 students is $100,000.
Right.
And I think that that's the push that we need to keep doing. And I know that the high school staff is doing that, but that's the push that we need to keep doing.
And that's interesting. The more, if you look towards those future years, the increase in spending is measured on your per pupil spend. So the more pupils you have, the more kind of free money there would be if you're in that zone.
I just want to make sure that with this amount, when we move forward with a vote, that it leaves us some space between that number and that 5% cap, that we're not going beyond that.
I believe it does. I think the intent is to take this extra money and do a double payment on the debt. We don't have to do that next year if we can't. But this is because we're not locked into it, but it gives us some flexibility next year as we develop things.
And I guess the other thing is, I would say is, you certainly don't want to get called to the principal's office with this new tax rate review. But if we had a situation where we went over by, a very slight amount and we were paying off debt, that's an easy, case to make to the AOE to say, we should get the cap, right? We're not like out there, we're spending irresponsibly, we're paying off debt.
But we just need to find at least 5 mountain bike enthusiasts.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Got it,
Actually.
Owen?
You were talking about the local revenues that dropped so much last year, but you said that they would probably stabilize the next few years. What was it that was making them drop so much last year? Was it just grants or?
Some of it was grants, some of it is the state has forced us to separate food service from the general fund. And so some of the food service revenues we no longer recognize in this portion of the budget. And so that's a one-time, you cut it out and everything else remains fairly stable. There's one other revenue line that's gone up 3 years in a row, and I have mixed emotions about it. It's our special ed grant money. And if we're getting more money, that's because we're spending more money. So it's one of those, you don't really want it to go up, you want it to be stable. But yeah.
And just for the board's edification, so you're not, it's not just Jim and I in a fever dream about this stuff. This is in the media. This is an article from Stowe over the holidays where they're, you can Google this, of course, but where they're talking about the headline, Stowe schools to budget extra without tax rate increases. And their number was the same one we looked at last time, was around 1.5 million. We adjusted that after some of those local revenue things came through. But you can see, they're saying that the same thing, right? The math also works in reverse, according to Superintendent Ray Harity. If district officials decided we're not going to spend a dime more we spent last year, tax rate would be the same. Even the district would have to make significant cuts, and it'd be devastating, right? So districts are talking about this kind of all over the state. Okay.
Any other questions from the board? All right, we have a motion to approve and second, so all those in favor of voting approval of this budget would please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. The budget has passed at this level.
And Rand, what do we,
Yeah, you have to take a roll call vote now.
Okay, sorry about that. If you're online, would you please start by saying aye or no? Matt,
Aye.
Bryce,
Aye.
I don't think there's any other board members online. Oh, Ray? You're on mute.
I don't think he votes.
I don't think he doesn't vote.
I don't think I vote for this. I don't vote for this.
Okay.
You still matter.
All right, we'll just go around the table. Ben?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
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 Nay. Nay.
Aye. 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 Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
All right.
thank you, Marina, for helping us here.
Okay.
All right, so the next, up is the adopt the resolution of necessity for capital construction project.
Jim, do you want to speak to this one? This, I think, is probably a result of your conversation with Bob Fletcher.
Sure. In Vermont, when you do a capital project, you have to state for the record why you need to do the capital project. And so this is a legal document drafted by our attorney that tells us that you want to do the project. Couple of things that are important to note. It's not in this declaration, never mind, it's in another part, which is the lack of state funding for this, but that's.
Yeah, you see that in a second, be it further resolved, yeah.
And so this is your process of acknowledging that you want to do this project.
And this is not the bond itself, is that correct?
That's correct.
And this is just a required step to be able to have a bond?
Correct.
Is it something we need to vote on?
Yes.
The motion to move this declaration forward?
I'll second. Thank you. Any questions from the board members?
So according to this, the bond amount is now gonna be 99,
That's correct.
and we're limiting the cost to taxpayers to 60% increase.
That's our policy.
But the state is also adding a 20% increase to property taxes for the CLA.
This is for
Just the news the other
FY
day.
25.
Yeah.
So you're talking about like the numbers we just looked at?
No, that's separate. The state's also talking about doing a 20% property tax hike statewide. So now we're talking, I'm just trying to make sure that we had this all figured out to our voters.
Sure.
That we're talking like a significant increase over the next 3 years.
I think you may be referring to the tax commissioner's December 1 letter where he talked about an 18.5% increase statewide. Yeah, driven by 12.5% increases in school
Yeah.
budgets. That's the CLA.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when you take the 5% of, the school budgets and then you add what the CLA is doing on average statewide, people are looking at 18.5. It's not an additional 18.5 to the numbers we just looked at.
But it's an 18.5% increase, and then you're doing another 16 on top of
Across the
that.
state, most of our districts are gonna see worse than that in 25.
Yeah.
But the thing to bear in mind is that the repayment for the school project will not come online until FY 28. So we're not talking about FY 25 or 6 or 7.
Right.
This is several years down the road.
But
Yeah.
we're also been talking about this being driving enrollment, but over the next 4 years, based off just our class numbers, as they stand right now, we're talking about 75 down. Between this next 4 graduating classes before that would start, to the new classes coming in based on our number of students back here.
Well, you're expecting that the classes that will replace graduating classes will be smaller than the ones that.
Well, that's what we see in our numbers right here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to follow.
Yeah, so we're talking about driving enrollment for this new school and the price, and we're not seeing that as a thing that's going to happen, as a trend. I mean, we're talking 56, 50, 61, like those are class sizes. We're getting rid of 83 and 75 and 80 and 85.
Right, but we're not gonna see enrollment from the new builds until it's happening, right? So those are the numbers.
We're not gonna, what kind of enrollment do you think you're gonna see from the new build? I don't think we're gonna see anything increase. We're gonna see what we see.
Fair. Am I moderating this discussion?
You can, or I can.
Please keep in mind that you're missing an important part of that enrollment, and that is the tuition students that we start getting in the 7th grade. So we have 7th and 8th through 12th, and so that gap that you're talking about is mostly filled from out-of-town students. Not 100%, but mostly filled by out-of-town students.
Bob?
Yeah, I don't think voting to borrow this money for the construction project has anything to do with the number of students we expect to have over the next few years. We're one boiler blowing up or one roof falling in away from having no school. Every one of those kids is gonna have to go somewhere else if something like that happens. So not building a new school is not an option anymore. Right?
Sam?
And one of the points that was just made is that, you know, the only way that we can look at potentially lowering any costs is by upping enrollment, and we are never gonna up enrollment with the building that we have now. So, you know, I've been on the board for 8 years now, and I actually remember when I first started on this board, as, you know, single mom who was on a budget, you know, I was thinking to myself, gosh, this new school board built, is this really worth it? Can I afford this? Can I do this? And I've been sitting on this board for years, listening to the conversations. We can't afford not to. We really can't. The building that is, you know, my son's going to this high school now, like, it's bad. It's really bad, and we're lucky we have amazing educators that we do have. Because they would not be, it's amazing what they're doing in the building that they have. It is absolutely incredible, but they need a better building. Our students need a better building. And it's gonna, even though we're talking about this initial cost now, it would cost the district so much more money over time to try and keep this building. Like that's the thing that I think people think, they're like, oh, just fix the building. If you look, we've having this conversation, we have many slides that we've gone over. But if we try to keep fixing this building, which we have, these buildings, which we have been doing for a long time now, we're gonna spend so much more money than getting a newer, better one for our district.
I have a little show and tell, Sam, and you were perfectly.
Bring a pipe to a board meeting?
I brought a pipe to a board meeting. We repaired 2 leaks in the middle school hydronic hot water system over the Christmas break. One, we had a kiddie pool under. One of them, we cut the pipe, the other section broke off and fell in our hands. But this is a pipe that we cut out of the middle school, which is not our problem section. And if you look at it, we're getting about 20% flow through the pipe.
So we're ruining pumps that goes.
The reason we can't get hot water down to the far end is we can't get enough water through the pipe to actually get.
Jim, why don't you just run some decalcification solution through it?
If we decalcify it, which we
It'll
could
literally
do,
disintegrate.
then we'll have 104 leaks because he's plugging all the holes.
Yeah, it's literally what's keeping them together.
I think I have Bryce was up first. Bryce,
That's frightening.
Yeah, I'll just echo a little bit of what Sam just said, but because I totally agree with everything you just said, Sam. But I also want to make sure that we're clear. The way I've thought of this for a really long time, maybe not initially. I started on the board around the same time as Sam, but over time we've learned, right? Like this number, it isn't going to be what drives the tax rate. I mean, it does, but indirectly, things like the bond rate that we're going to get have just as much, if not more so, influence over this number being 99 million or if it was $80 million. Things like that matter a lot. We were talking about this years ago when it was in the 2% range, 2.5% range, and now it's higher. And that actually has huge implications to taxes, more so than the actual amount going up. So I would just encourage people to not worry so much about this dollar amount. It comes down to all the other factors. I personally don't care whether it's $140 million or if it's $60 million if the tax rate goes up the exact same percentage. So it's a numbers game, and we have strong people that have been working on this, and I think they're trying their best to be clear about those implications. And that should be the focus, is on that increased percentage if that's what you're worried about, not so much on a total dollar amount.
So this is just a point of order. This is just the recognition of the need.
Right.
I have some more materials on costing and that sort of stuff. I was kind of saving for the actual budget warning.
I
just wanted to, I guess ask a question. If plan B would be to fix the school, and you can't, it breaks. Is plan C to be in trailers, and what would that cost? Like if we just had to relocate all kids into.
well, I know that it's $250,000 for each trailer, and so how
Right.
many would?
I mean, other communities do that, but it's not a great option.
Each trailer is 2 classrooms, right?
Right.
I'm just gonna make a motion where we kind of saved.
Okay.
This is like
Call the question.
been raised, this is kind of not
Call the
conversation
question.
pertinent, yes.
Are you calling the question?
Yes, I'm calling.
Okay, thank you. All right, the question has been called, so we need to take a vote. Let me put the people back there.
Oh, sure. Just what that is, right? We actually already have a motion in a second though.
We do. Okay, all those in favor of the resolution of necessity for capital construction project, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have to do a roll call. Bryce?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
I don't know if Ray votes or not. No, he does not. Ben?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
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 Nay.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the resolution has passed, and now we're into the adopting form of warning for capital construction bond issue.
Yeah, a little discussion on this one, or a little bit of presentation. So this next item is the warning itself. This would go as an article in front of most towns in our district town meeting. This is the school side of business. I wanted to call out some unfortunate language that we're going to have to kind of address in this. You see that bold language is required by state law. Current state law, despite the fact that the school construction aid program is suspended since 2007. If you have to say that state funds may not be available at the time the project is otherwise eligible to receive state school construction aid, the district is responsible for all costs incurred in connection with any borrowing by the district for the project in anticipation of the state school construction aid. To kind of address the prejudice that's going to, have on a voter who may or may not be informed. We have kind of repeated this required language with some prefatory language to explain that there really isn't a Vermont school construction aid program right now. And while we recognize that, the district is responsible to meet our responsibility, this is the last sentence. While limiting impacts to district taxpayers, the district intends to use other state funding such as available tax capacity resulting from the implementation of new pupil loads under Act 127. The amounts raised through private fundraising. We have $3.5 million so far. Some time, obviously, before FY 28 for those debts would come due.
So you're saying that middle paragraph that's in bold has to be there,
Yes.
and then we're gonna repeat a bit of it in the third paragraph?
Yep, we don't wanna, have someone say you were monkeying with it, right? So we wanna have it kind of stand on its own and then, you know.
Can it
provide
be
some
not
additional
in bold though?
Has to be in bold.
Can we put the whole thing in bold then?
What's that?
Oh,
Let me go back to the materials that we were looking at the last time, because I got some new information, new developments. We were talking. Yeah, oh, the new building, yeah, these, we lost our, what do we call those barns on the back of the building, right? But anyway, the question is on everybody's minds, and that we're gonna be facing at our road shows as we go to each town over the next 2 months and other events, right? A couple more building tours. Is this project financially feasible? And is the price reasonable? We're still confident that we can meet the, the 16% commitment that we made to our taxpayers. But it's interesting, the State Board of Education, this is the board that runs the Agency of Education. It's about a 9 or so member board. They actually updated the square foot pricing over the Christmas holiday. On December 20th, they adopted new square foot. And this is, if you can look at column B here, then, and it's for high schools, it's $620 per square foot, plus $12.50 for demo, plus $12.50 per square foot for site work. That gets you to $645 for high schools and $620 for middle school. Our project, with all in is at $627. So we are squarely within the new state guidelines for construction aid, should that program come back. Also, and I don't know if you guys can see this, it's a little bit of an eye chart, but as part of making that recommendation to the board, the interim secretary of education gathered a number of inputs. One of them was from Truex Collins. This is an architecture firm out of Burlington that does Vermont school projects. And they grabbed 5 projects over the last couple years. And the notes here, I'll read them because it's difficult to see. But they said, cost opinions presented here include estimated cost of construction and estimated professional fees, but do not include FF&E. FF&E is fixtures, furnishings, and equipment. Our number of 627 does. The cost opinions are presented in this column without accounting for cost escalate. Oh, that's that one, okay. Let's see, numerous sources indicate real inflation for commercial construction between 15% and 19% between December of 21 and early 2023. We certainly were victims of that. They assumed a 10% annual inflation. You can see there in that kind of center column, the broad one. Despite the fact that, real world escalation is between 15 and 19. And let's see. Yeah, so they say for illustration purposes, we're using a global annual inflation rate of 10% so that we can compare theoretical cost as of today. So anyway, you can see these school per foot prices are coming in at the second, to last column there, between $633 a square foot and $726 a square foot. Every one of these projects is more expensive than our project on a square foot basis. So just some context for what, at a state level, everyone's looking at from a pricing standpoint.
And those are estimates and our prices are estimates, so it's apples to apples on estimates.
That's correct. I mean, like you can see the status, let's see, like the Milton Elementary schools, those are proposed. I think those are going to bond. Those bottom 2 are 2 options. One's like a renovation, the other one's a new build, right? So they've got different pricing. That project hasn't happened yet. I think the other ones, some of them have already happened, like the Danville schools was December of 21, Central Vermont Career Center, that was May of 21. And they were adding that escalation to those, prices from those dates.
Thanks, Ben, for getting this information.
Sure. I think, I know everyone's gonna get a lot of questions from.
No, it's really helpful.
Gives you some perspective on kind of where this project stacks up.
As far as the previous chart, the fact that the state just made these changes, is that any indication that they might bring back this construction?
There's a lot of talk about it, right? I mean, I don't know, we'll see where the excess tax capacity over the next 5 years goes. There's a lot of money in that formula. There's also a lot of volatility in terms of what could happen. They can bring that 10% down. We don't know what's gonna happen. But that could be like a backdoor to state aid. At least that's what I got excited about over the holidays. I got excited about cookies. Okay, thanks, everyone. I don't know if we didn't have a motion, why we need a motion for the form of warning for capital construction bond issue.
Okay, is there a motion to, what's the word I'm looking for? I've lost a verb here.
Adopt the form of warning.
Is there a motion to move forward this, form of warning?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Adam. Bob, are there any further questions, comments from the board? Okay, it appears that we are ready to vote. All in favor of approving the form of warning for capital construction bond issue, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Unanimous vote, thank you.
Do we need to go roll call on this one?
No,
No.
you can have a name.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so I see we have something called the adopt the declaration of official intent.
And, what, Jim, do you want to explain, why we need to do this one now?
I don't know that I can. Yeah, because the lawyer said so.
Okay.
Okay. I think we just need a motion.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Anna and Sam, thank you. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor of adopting the declaration of official intent, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. No, we have one more. We have to adopt the warning for the public informational hearing.
Yeah, this is the budget session, info session that we do every year in the library.
Okay,
Good.
is there a motion to adopt the warning?
So moved.
Second. And Sam. Okay, any questions or discussion on the warning? Okay, all those in favor of adopting the warning for public informational meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that will be on Thursday, the 29th.
And Raina, keep me honest here, but this next one is the warning of the district annual meeting, which appears to be March 5th, 2024, which should be happening at town meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Via Australian ballot.
Right. So this essentially gets us out of gathering in the library and conducting the business of the school district separate from town meeting. We just put this on the ballot and voters come in, get their school district ballot and their town business ballot and handle it all there. That's officially our annual meeting at that point.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt the warning for the district annual meeting? Anna, Bob?
She's not sick.
Bob is second. Any questions on this? All those in favor of adopting the warning for the district annual meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you doing all of that.
I think you should get a cookie or something. Or a brownie. Raina said there's.
Yeah, can we pass them around?
This is
Also, Rita, did you make the brownies? I did. Yeah, I was gonna say, brownie. I'm thinking of brownie, wait, do I want a corner or?
The audience is also welcome.
You were down chocolate.
Receive, thank you. All right, so we are
Hey,
at.
Ben, just so you know, your screen is still being shared with the public. With the, yeah.
All right, we're back. Okay, we need to approve the minutes from the December 4th meeting as well as the December 18th meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve both at the same time.
Second.
All right, any corrections or additions to those minutes? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, at this time, we have a lot of time for public comment. So if there are members of the public that would like to speak, are we skipping? Oh, did I miss something?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Sorry about that. No, we are not quite ready for public comment. I don't see it in mine. It's number 6.
Before that.
Oh, all right, we've jumped ahead. Sorry about that. Okay, committee, updates, finance committee. I think you just gave us some major information.
Yeah, we've been busy, so during commissioner update.
Nothing more we should know. All right, we'll move right into the policy committee.
Yep, so we have 4 policies that we're gonna do as a group. We're still in the process of updating our policies to comply with the SBA. So I have these 4 policies that are up for adoption, and they're basically formatting changes. We looked at them last time. So I need a motion to adopt them.
I'm sorry.
Discussion.
Is there any discussion on this? State mandated policies?
Can we adopt them all at once, or do we have
Yeah.
to do them?
Yeah, please. Somebody would like to make a motion to adopt all at once? Somebody do.
Yeah.
Okay, all at once, all right. We seconded it.
Mhm.
All right, any further discussion? Nope, okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you, policy committee, you seem to have much work. All right, thank you.
Honestly, it's been a massive machine. Okay.
Gladius. All right, buildings and grounds, Matt.
Yeah, we did meet. It was an abbreviated meeting. It was the night of the special meeting, and we only had one agenda item, and that was to review and open the bids for the HVAC system at Killington Elementary School. The only one bidder made a proposal, and it was over $300,000 over what we have in the budget to pay for that project. And so we voted as a committee to reject the bid and go out to rebid in the future when we can put together more money for the project. That was the only item we had at the last meeting.
I have a question.
Okay, Anna has a question.
And Matt, what's the current status of the HVAC and its need for replacement?
So I know if Joe is there, he's in a better position to answer that. I can't tell if he's in the room.
He's not. I can help out though, Matt.
Okay.
The HVAC in Killington West and Reading is all 5 to 15 years beyond its expected useful life. And so not only is it failing, it's at a level that's about 50% of what we expect at current standards. And so we have engineering for Reading. Reading's out to bid right now. We've done the Killington bid. We're engineering the West project. We have some funding through Efficiency Vermont toward these projects, but it hasn't been enough. And so we're working on trying to figure out how to do the rest. These are projects that we're going to have to do sooner or later. It's overdue.
Thank you. Okay, anything further for buildings and grounds? All right, thank you. Negotiations, hiring and retention committee. Bryce, do you want to give an update?
Yeah, I mean, it is has been alluded to, negotiations are ongoing. Obviously, not much we can say besides that. There's a placeholder in the budget. Doesn't mean it's going to fall in the number at all. It's a placeholder. Just as for those of you that maybe are new to the board or unaware, this is not uncommon. You know, in the 8 years I've been doing this, before at Barnard Academy, and probably Carrie could speak to it better than I, because she was on the other side of the table before that. This is just very commonplace. You know, negotiations usually wrap up after the budget time period, and to be honest, a lot of years it's the fall when school starts, and we have to kind of pay back pay. So just want everybody to realize I think we're still in good shape to have it be earlier than some cycles, but we're just not there yet in time for the budget period, which is kind of the norm. But that's it.
All right, thank you. Any working groups have a report?
Just on the new bill, now that we are going to have a new school on the ballot in March, will be a series of information meetings in every town in the district over the next couple of months. I want to thank board members for helping to organize that with the select boards and other groups in your communities. And more to follow. Marlene is online. Marlene, sorry to put you on the spot. Was there anything you wanted to say with regard to the upcoming roadshows?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay, hi. Hello there. No, I just want to thank everyone, board members, for your help with planning the roadshow tours, and getting the word out overall, sending us questions, to Ben or myself. And I don't necessarily have anything to add other than that, but, I will be releasing a new toolkit, to promote the tours, and I could use, all the help, getting that out on social media channels, you know, with your own personal, content, network and all that. So, I'll be in touch, with the board with that toolkit, should have it in a day or so.
Thanks, Marlene.
Yep.
Okay. Now then, I think we are ready for public comment. So we welcome you to identify yourself and speak briefly, in case there's a lot of people who want to make it. If not, we have a little more time.
Are we still sticking to a 2-minute?
We try to stick to that, yes. Yes.
Sachs, I have a comment and I have a question. The comment, unless I misunderstood, one of the board members said that the bond was $99 million, which we know it is. And with the rating we'll get, it could be 80 something. And I just wanted to clear that up. The rating has nothing to do with the size of the bond. It has only impact on the interest rate on the bond. And I heard that comment, so unless I misunderstood what he said, the bond doesn't change based on the rating. The amount of interest paid over the length of the bond will change. My question, the question that I have is, will the actual school budget and the bond be two different votes at town meeting? Or if you adopt the budget, it includes the bond?
No, it's two separate articles. On the,
Okay, so there'll be two votes.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Tom.
Tom DiGiacomo, please.
I hope that can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is a question for Ben. A few meetings ago, when the attempt to reduce the bond from about 120 million down to the 99 million, he had mentioned artificial turf and removing a classroom, and he also mentioned something about furniture. My question is, what is included in the bond in terms of equipment versus a capital expenditure in the budget? And could you list those things? I mean, there's obviously there are pieces of equipment in a science lab, but if the furniture was part of that, then is there any other part of the bond that's included in the 99 million that is actually furnishings or something beyond capital equipment, like maybe, for example, a large screen in the auditorium? Has that been broken down and figured out?
Yeah, and we don't typically answer questions during public comment, but I'm happy to show you, and I can send you this deck after the presentation time, or after the board meeting if you'd like. But here's the breakdown of costs, and it's essentially 90 million for the construction, and then a list of what we consider soft costs. I don't know if you can see your screen, but you can see there Furniture's, fixtures, furnishings and equipment, what we think of as FFB is at 1.765 million. And that's part of the 99 million, that will go to bond.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay, can you, use that so we can see
Oh,
this?
sorry. Oh, yeah, it's not sharing.
Doesn't look like there are any other. Might wanna ask Tom to mute though, because he's not muted.
So I guess I need to just go to, sorry, my Zoom. Not wanting to go away. Sorry, guys.
Okay, well, if there are no other public comments, then, we, do have a probably brief executive session tonight for the board members, preceded by a photo that we're going to take down in Sherry's office for the newspaper printing that goes out to, with all the budget information. So thank you all for attending tonight, and
Like an hour and 43 minutes.
this would be a good time to.
So that's,
I've heard that from a lot of people.
I've heard they have really good health insurance.
Yeah. No, I've heard that from a lot of
Say it again.
We are coming out of executive session and we have nothing to report.
No, actually.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to, oh, wait a minute, we have to reflect.
I will reflect on, that's a 2 hour and 33 minute meeting.
Yeah.
No, 3 hour meeting.
Big ticket items got handled.
Yeah, usually in past years was a 4-hour meeting.
You almost have me not coming just because the anticipation of a longer meeting.
Reflections.
I want to reflect on the great brownies that Rena made.
Yes.
All right,
She's not in there.
I don't know if she's still here.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Goodbye
Right
from
on.
North Carolina. Go blue.